Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fascinating clash that happens in pretty much every single business. We're talking about the collision between rigid, mechanical accounting systems and, well, unpredictable human psychology.
So here's a paradox basically every financial professional has to face at some point. Why exactly do smart budgets make people do dumb things? I mean, organizations literally spend months crafting these perfect financial targets, right? But instead of inspiring greatness, these rigid targets often accidentally destroy performance. You see managers hiding money, salespeople delaying closing their deals, and long-term growth completely sacrificed just to hit a quarterly bonus. Today, we're going to figure out exactly why this happens and, more importantly, how to fix it.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at management control systems. Then, the human side of budgeting, dysfunctional behaviors, the controllability principle, and finally, how we balance systems with people.
Let's get right into Section 1, Management Control Systems.
Think of these control systems kind of like a timeline. Before the action even happens, we use what's called feed-forward control. This is all about anticipating problems, like setting up a budget before the year even starts. Then, during operations, we have concurrent control, which actively monitors the process while it's actually happening. And finally, after the fact, we rely on feedback control, where we measure our actual results against the plan we made, typically through variance analysis.
So, it essentially boils down to this really simple equation. Control equals feed forward before, concurrent during, and feedback after. It's a beautiful, completely logical framework. But, as we all know, a system is really only as good as the people operating it.
Which brings us to Section 2, the human side of budgeting.
Now, there's a pretty stark contrast between the two main ways we go about setting a budget. On one side, you have participative, or bottom-up budgeting. This is where you actually ask the team what their target should be. This creates fantastic ownership, higher commitment, and great morale. But the downside? It is incredibly slow, and it invites people to set super easy targets for themselves. On the flip side, we have imposed, or top-down budgeting. This relies on the head office just dictating the numbers. It's wonderfully quick, it aligns perfectly with corporate strategy, but the staff have absolutely zero buy-in. And honestly, it can be highly demotivating because those targets might feel completely unrealistic to the people on the ground.
So, as you can see, there is absolutely no perfect one-size-fits-all system here. As performance management pros, we are constantly forced to trade off between the efficiency of that top-down strategy and the motivation of bottom-up reality. And when that balance is off, well, things start to get weird. Moving on to Section 3, Dysfunctional Budget Behaviors.
Okay, so when these performance metrics are poorly balanced, we start to see a whole lineup of what is basically corporate sabotage, driven purely by the metrics themselves. First up is gaming. This is when a manager accelerates sales or delays necessary expenses just to hit a specific bonus threshold by the end of the month. Then there's smoothing, where earnings are manipulated to look perfectly stable to the outside world, totally masking the reality of the situation. But the most dangerous one might actually be short-termism. This happens when desperate managers cut vital, long-term investments, things like R&D, staff training, or machine maintenance, literally just to boost today's profit. And finally, we have budgetary slack.
Let's zoom in on that last one. Budgetary slack is essentially just padding the budget out of self-preservation. Employees deliberately overestimate how much a project will cost, or underestimate the revenue they think they can bring in, just to guarantee they hit their targets. Why? Because they fear that if they set an aggressive target and fail, they'll lose their bonus, or even worse, face budget cuts next year. It creates these massive inefficiencies because the organization suddenly has all this hidden capacity it doesn't even know about. And that brings up a huge foundational truth we have to remember. Budgeting influences behavior, period. If your employees are gaming the system or hoarding resources, it's not just a people problem, it is a system design problem. We need a smarter approach to design, one that motivates people without forcing them to manipulate the numbers. All right, Section 4, the controllability principle.
This right here acts as the ultimate fairness rule. The controllability principle states that managers should only be evaluated on costs, revenues, and assets that they can actually control. Holding someone accountable for an expense that is completely outside their power to change, that instantly destroys the integrity of your entire management control system. It breeds resentment, and it absolutely guarantees demotivation. So, when you're drawing the line during a performance review, making these distinctions is critical. Direct material and labor costs, those are controllable. The manager can negotiate with suppliers, they can reduce waste, or they can manage the schedule. But what about apportioned head office rent or central marketing? Non-controllable.
A divisional manager literally cannot do anything about the fancy downtown rent the CEO decided to sign a lease for. Forcing that allocated cost into a divisional review is just inherently unfair. You absolutely must exclude these arbitrary allocations.
Think of this as your golden rule for system integrity. Evaluate only on items a manager can actually influence and strictly exclude those allocated costs. Following this mandate protects your managers from feeling like the whole system is just rigged against them.
And finally, Section 5, Balancing Systems and People.
So what's the solution? Well, it's a blended best practice procedure that kind of gives you the best of both worlds. Step 1 requires strategic direction from the top, where executives set the big vision and the ultimate goals. Step 2 requires operational input from the bottom, where the people actually doing the work provide realistic estimates of what it takes to get there. And Step 3 is to review and negotiate. This dialogue right here is where the magic happens. It successfully integrates the efficiency of that top-down strategy with the deep commitment of bottom-up participation.
As we wrap up today, I want you to consider your own workplace for a second. Are your performance metrics actually inspiring greatness, or are they just encouraging a better game? If your system relies purely on strict feedback control without any participative input or fair controllability, you might just be teaching your team how to hide their mistakes better. So design measures that actually matter, align them with your strategy, and always manage the behavior. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.